How to heal your relationship with your parents, Brown Girl Edition. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all so much. If you like my videos and you'd like to see more, I would greatly appreciate it if you could like, comment and subscribe. Let's get into it. I did a Q&A on my Instagram a while ago where one of the questions was what my relationship was like with my parents. And when I talked about this a little bit, I had a few people who reached out and asked me how I went about healing this relationship, how I'm going about the process, because I can't say that I'm 100% there. I'm definitely not. But I thought it was a really important topic, so I was like, let's have a chat about it. I'll go through some of the steps when I reflected on how exactly I got there, or I'm getting there, the steps that I took to get there, and then chat about what I'm still working on at the moment. So a little bit of context as to where I'm at now and where I was. I did live out of home for about 3 years. I'm now back with my parents. It has been a very interesting journey. During that time that I was away, I actually had a really good relationship with my parents, but I found that it was quite superficial. I would give them a phone call every other day and it was all good. I moved out of home when I was 22 and I moved back in with my parents when I was 25. My parents remembered a 22-year-old me, which is a very different version of me. I came back as a 25-year-old with a little bit more life experience, had lived on her own, so learned a lot that way. And I actually also came back in a relationship with someone who was of a Caucasian background, which was also a very interesting experience, which we'll get into another time. My parents remembered a different version of me. They remembered someone who had not had that much experience in life and things. They were expecting that. So it caused a lot of barriers and a lot of friction. I understand when people say that, oh my gosh, I could not move back with my parents. I totally get that because I felt the same when I moved, but I'm actually really grateful I did because I think it was a bit of a catalyst when it comes to healing this relationship. Without me having moved back, they would have never needed to see an authentic version of me. They would only have had this inauthentic like creation of who I am. I think this is a pretty common theme amongst South Asians. I am the first child. I am a daughter. I have brown parents. I grew up being a bit of a parent pleaser and it's something we're still working through. I was that child that always achieved what they wanted of me, always achieved those higher expectations. So far, had always completed everything according to their timeline. Yes, I was a little bit outspoken, but given all these other things, that was something that we kind of let slide. So when I came home with a white boyfriend, all hell broke loose at home. And I can talk about this while I'm laughing now. There was a time where my mum was not talking to me and I felt like I had murdered someone. I felt so guilty, and crime was that I was dating someone I wanted to date. Absolutely crazy how that parent pleasing trait sits within you. For context, that's where we were at one point, and now I'm at a place where I'm quite happy living in my parents' home. I don't have as much of an expectation or pressure about the idea of getting married. They understand that I'm very happy exactly where I am right now. My parents actually know about my freelance modeling, all the things that I do on the side, like content creation and everything, to a point where they're almost a little bit proud of what I've created so far and excited to see what's to come. I also feel comfortable and confident expressing myself authentically. There are things that they don't always want to hear about and I'm not going to shove it in their face, but if it comes out, it's also something that I'm not going to shy away from. Let's talk about how we got there. First thing you need to cultivate within yourself is empathy. Empathy for the people around you, just like how you give empathy to yourself. Know that their expectations of you do not come from a place of making life harder for you. It actually comes from a place of love. You then take a step back and realize, okay, how can I approach this from a place of love? Ultimately, all they want for you is happiness. Their version of happiness is very different to yours. And that's where the barrier comes up. For them to recognize and realize that that version of happiness is not what you want is a very challenging step. When you come at it with empathy, you can get there. My parents realized that their version of happiness was not my version when they saw me as unhappy as I was in the career that I was in. The things that they lacked, like stability in income and like living and things, was what was the formula for happiness and what they wanted for us. When they saw me having achieved that and then still not being happy, realized, okay, well maybe she needs to do what she wants to do to be able to be happy. They have had the wildest lives. Like they have moved across to another another country with barely anything in their hands and made life work. And yet what they're wanting for us is stability, safety, being not too far away from family, and all this stuff that they literally like jumped over mountains to get to is interesting. I think reflecting on childhood seminar, the people around me could all see that I had a very strong creative side. If that was cultivated a little bit more, I sometimes wonder where we would be at now. Understanding that they're coming from a place of love forms the basis of anything else you do in this space. Because like I said, when you understand that they are coming from a place of love, whatever they're doing, and even if it is hurting you, you can see it from a place of empathy. Come at it from a place of love yourself. The next stage, and this is so tough, I think it took me a year to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're like me, and if you are a parent pleaser, you are going to have to sit in discomfort. I honestly think this step is the hardest step, and as a recovering parent pleaser, I still have these lingering feelings where I'm feeling guilty for something I should not be feeling guilty for, and I just have to sit in it, and I have to reflect on it, and I have to think about, where is it coming from? Is it actually coming from genuine guilt, or is it my parent pleasing traits coming out? If you are finding that you're doing something and you're feeling so guilty about it, I urge you to sit in that discomfort and lean into it and think about whether you're genuinely feeling guilty, or is it just your parent pleasing and you think that your parents might be disappointed in something that you're doing, even though it is very aligned with you. Then know that it is your parent pleasing personality and trait. If it's something that you genuinely feel guilty about, then feel guilty about it because you might have done something wrong. Just know that if you are a parent pleaser, this sort of personality trait will or can show up in relationships as well, and it's really important to acknowledge it, because a lot of that shows up in more of that anxious attachment style as well, where you start to believe you have to behave a certain way to receive love. Keep in mind that if this is something that plays out for you, this is something that you might want to work on. But Dad saw one of my photo shoots at the beach on Instagram. He actually sent me an email to ask me to take it down. He didn't tell me forcefully that I had to have to take it down, but he asked me to reflect on what I want the world to see me as, and so he asked me to take it down. It was an email, so he was clearly not ready to have that conversation, although he wanted that message across. So we didn't get to have that conversation at that time, and later Mum actually got an anonymous message on Facebook saying some really horrible things about me. That resulted in a bit of a catastrophe at home, and there was a lot of hurt and a lot of emotions, high emotion. In that moment, I decided, no, I'm going to be authentic and speak my truth when they're ready to hear it. That experience, honestly, I had like an anxiety attack. I was feeling dizzy, I was feeling nauseous, I needed to sit down because the world was spinning around. It resulted in so many authentic conversations where I could tell my parents about why I do what I do. While they don't fully agree with it, they could then learn to respect it. I still sit in discomfort. The discomfort I was able to endure in that experience allowed me to get closer to my parents and allowed them to understand my perspective. Their question is, why you? Why can't someone else do it? To which I'm like, look, if I'm feeling this strongly about certain things, I'm going to do it. We're not on the same page on it, but that's okay because we can respect each other at this stage. Learning and understanding communication styles. This is so important when it comes to any difficult conversation that you have, but especially conversations with loved ones, because it can get so hot and heavy. Learn and understand different people's communication styles. If you're someone who clashes with that communication style, take a step back. Get out of your emotions and being hot and heavy before coming back to that conversation. At home, my brother is almost like a mediator who is really good at listening and understanding to all sides of a story before jumping in. But honestly, you shouldn't need to have that. For me, I need to take a step out of it to realign my thought before I come back to it, because I know I get really worked up by things. Really getting them to understand things I was doing was not in fact to hurt them. Just like how I had to understand that them wanting certain things for me wasn't to force me to do things or to hurt me. It actually came from a place of love. I had to really work on explaining to them that the things I was doing was a lot for myself and for my generation and not to hurt them. So having these conversations with my parents really pushed me to understand my own why as to why I was doing what I was doing, to be able to understand why I felt so strongly about certain things, for me to then articulate it to them. If you're from the South Asian community, you can probably relate to this. A lot of our expectations seem to come from our society, how people will view what we are doing. Having these open conversations with my parents allowed me to express dissatisfaction with this mentality and the problems around it. I was able to then explain how this is the root cause of why in our society people feel that they need to fit into a certain box, why they have so many boundaries around what they're doing, and why people from our community don't feel like they can fully express themselves. I was was able to have these conversations with my parents because I was able to communicate these thoughts. The next step that's really, really important is forgiveness. Forgive them just like you forgive yourself for doing the wrong thing whenever you have. This is going to come as a massive generalization because I know not everyone has had this sort of experience, and it's not fair for me to say that everyone's experience was this. You weren't always a perfect child. I'm sure there were multiple times throughout the time that you were growing up where you have done the wrong thing or you've hurt your parents in some sort of way. They have let go of it and they've moved on because they give you the benefit of the doubt. You're a child, you might not know better, and you're just a child. And give them that same leeway. And again, this is a massive generalization. They are doing the best they can with the circumstances and situations given to them. Think about it this way. If you were the first child, you were the experiment. They haven't been parents before. They can only learn from the people around them, just like we learn about society from the people around us. Their friends are telling them to do a certain thing. The society is encouraging certain things, and they only know what they know in their boundaries. Especially if you're the first child, you are the experiment. Everything that they may have potentially done wrong or could have done better, they do better for that second child. If they don't know any better and they can't do any better, you have to give them that benefit of the doubt and you have to forgive them. You can definitely work through the boundaries, the limitations that you need to work through, knowing that it might have come from your upbringing, and still have appreciation, love, and respect for everything that they did provide you, and have empathy for their situation, and forgive the parts that you need to forgive. I think the world is not black and white. People are not right or wrong. There are nuances. There are multiple versions of different truths. You can do both. You can forgive them. You can acknowledge that some of your limitations and lacks come from your upbringing, and you can work on healing that relationship. The next step is to live as authentically as you can. Continue to live authentically as you create new versions of yourself. If you've done everything that I've talked about before, this is your time to then finally be you. This might be uncomfortable because you've had years of conditioning. It's your time to shine. Sit in that discomfort and keep going. There are times that my parents just choose to turn a blind eye. They don't want to know what I'm up to and what I'm doing, and that's okay. That's on them. If it does come out, it's not something I'm going to shy away from. It's something that I will open up and I will talk about authentically. If I do feel guilty and if I do feel upset and I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to sit in that. I'm going to work through it. We can continue to keep limiting ourselves because of the way we might be perceived, but then we're not going to live our authentic selves at all. So if you're at the stage where you feel like you can't do everything you want to do because you feel limited by your situation and circumstance, reflect on how you might respond to it if it did come out, and then work out where you're at and figure out what you can do next. And finally, the last thing I want to leave you with is that is an ongoing process. I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'll ever get fully there because I think we can keep healing and keep doing better. It is a relationship that on both sides we are both working on and working towards a better version of our relationship with each other. So it's an ongoing process. Currently, I know that I'm a bit of a disappointment towards my parents ever since I came home and introduced my white boyfriend, which we're not together anymore, but ever since then there has been a shift in that relationship because they kind of put me on a pedestal as this golden child, and that shattered. It held me on a pedestal where I was living up to an expectation that was way beyond something I could attain. It brought us all down to reality, and honestly it was a good thing. Now they have a more realistic view of me. I feel more comfortable doing something and be like, that didn't work. I don't have to keep proving to them that I'm this perfect human being. I think the thing that we're struggling, or we have struggled with a little bit, is the idea of being settled, meaning being married or being with someone, and I don't see it that way. So we've had a bit of a clash in that. We really are at a point where we respect each other's views. I know that they come from a place of wanting the best for me, and that's truly why they believe that they want to see me settled, because their version of settled is a certain thing. I don't have that view, so them seeing that I'm happy where I am now, enough for them at the moment. Me being 27 years old, it's crazy because we're only just kind of getting to the place where my parents are realizing that I'm an adult, I have thoughts and opinions and ideas of my own. They're coming to a place of understanding and realizing that, and not seeing me as a child. I can literally see that tug of war between them recognizing me as an adult versus still seeing me as a child. They've now come to that realization that I don't ask for permission, and I don't always ask for advice, and I don't always take their advice. I do understand that they've had more years of experience in life than me, so there are things that I always come to them for. And there are times that they've actually come to me to have discussions more as a friend than anything else, and I can see that growth in that space as well. So it's really exciting, but I do think this is an ongoing process, and I don't think that I'm fully there yet. I hope you were able to get something out of this video, and I hope if you are going through this sort of process, definitely connect with me, because it's something that I do love talking about, and I think it's so important that we do discuss. So as usual, if you enjoyed this video and if you got something out of it, it would mean the world to me if you could like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.